The Druid of Seoul Station, chapters 21 through 30. Please be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more. As lightning flashes in the background, Junho holds the knife above him and screams out. With a sudden downward motion, he plunges the knife into the goblin. After Junho's attack, the goblin releases the little dog, Baku. Again, shouts Suho. Junho strikes the goblin over and over again. Once the goblin is dead, he drops the knife to the ground and stares in disbelief at his bloody hands. Pick up the knife, Suho tells him. I can't do this, responds Junho. If you don't, you'll die, says Suho. Just then, Baku starts barking as another goblin crawls out of the shadows towards Junho. As the monster slowly comes closer, Suho turns his back on his brother and walks away. Junho has a flashback to his childhood when bullies were attacking him. Back then Suho didn't help him either. He's always been like this. Junho picks up the knife, realizing for the first time that he can only count on himself for protection. The goblin leaps at Junho with a loud growl, however Junho steps towards the monster and puts it down with one swing of his blade. Junho's eyes glow red dangerously, and the horror of this situation seems to transform him into a completely different person. He brutally finishes off the goblin and smiles sadistically as yet another goblin dashes towards him. This new goblin grabs Junho's knife arm and tackles him to the ground. The pouring rain and crackling lightning drown out the sounds of the fight. However, Junho gets the upper hand and slashes this final goblin with his blade. He then gets up and walks down the street with Baku trailing behind him as Suho watches from a rooftop. Before, Junho didn't have any stats, but now, after absorbing dimensional energy, he's awakened as an F rank in his class as Butcher. Suho tells his brother to join him on the roof. There, they destroy the horde of goblins there. After they're done killing the goblins, Suho and Junho visit the returnee control department. The employee at the desk looks nervously at Junho, who's covered in goblin blood. He was just awakened, says Suho. The employee tells them to go wash up first, then she can grade them to determine how much dimensional energy they have. After they wash up, Junho is connected to the energy reading machine. It whirs and flashes, but ultimately give Junho a reading of 111. This reading is enough for Junho to qualify for the hunter's exam. The technician who's operating the machine asks Suho if he'd like to be screened as well. Suho gets on the machine and it begins to make noise again. However, shortly after it starts, Suho hears a hissing noise and sees several eyes watching him. A status screen appears and informs him that someone is watching him. Suho is startled by this, but before he can say anything, the reading is complete. His dimensional energy is at 189. The technician is amazed that his energy level is increasing so rapidly, but Suho is still disturbed by what he just saw. Who made this machine? He asks. Oh, I'm pretty sure it was some scientist, responds the technician as Suho appears deep in thought. Suho and Junho return to the department's front desk and the employee tells Junho that his awakened ID card is ready. She also gives Junho a phone and tells him that he's eligible for the hunter's exam. Suho congratulates his brother and asks him if he felt anything weird while in the machine. No, I didn't sense anything, responds Junho. Just then, the brothers see the blonde woman called Suyeon walking down the hall with a group of her subordinates. Hey Blondie, Suho calls out to her. Sorry about what I said to you last time. I'm not used to talking to civilized people yet. Forget it, says Suyeon with a slightly irate look on her face. She then turns away and continues down the hall. But as they're walking away, her subordinates are questioning if Suho and Suyeon have something romantic going on between them. Back at the apartment, Captain Miso is drinking and having lunch with the old landlady. Suho and Junho enter a few minutes later and encounter Miso for the first time. Miso has been hanging out with the landlady for a while, waiting for Suho to appear. Now that he's arrived, she introduces herself and quickly gets down to business. The reason she came to see him is that the department wants to enter into a contract with him. Suho questions this, but before she answers, Miso has to explain the situation to him. Miso asks Suho if he knows what a coordinate human is. A coordinate human is someone who creates a bridge between the Earth and another planet. She then asks him if he arrived through a red portal when he returned to Earth. Yeah, it was red, answers Suho. The fact that you arrived through that portal means the requirements were met. That portal you traveled through will reappear and we will be able to visit the other side. Where will it appear? He asks. In response, she points directly at him and says, near the coordinate. You're the human coordinate for this particular bridge portal. Suho looks pensive and wonders if he'll be able to see the Red Wolf gang again and all of his animal friends. Miso tells him that the Returnee Control Department is assuming that his portal will connect to a fourth new planet. It should appear within 99 days from now. What we want from you is to stay in Korea until that portal appears. Miso tells him that the last irregular that appeared was also Korean. However, Japan made him an offer and he went there. That's why the bridge portal to the Hades planet is in Japan right now. If Suho leaves as well, Korea will be at a huge loss. Suho agrees to this, but in return he wants his clan to be promoted to guild status and to also have some land reserved strictly for them. Anything else? Asks Miso. Yeah, just one more thing, says Suho. Will there be any signs for when the portal will open? The Returnee Control Department has agents specialized in sensing dimensional energy. Miso tells Suho that she'll send her best agent to look out for when the portal is about to open. Suho wonders who that could be. Back at the department's headquarters, Suyong is training in the gym. She keeps remembering the way Suho talked to her, asking her to mate with him. Who does he think I am? She says as she takes her anger out on the punching bag. I should report him for harassment. Who harassed you? Asks Miso as she appears behind Suyong. Forget about it. What do you want? Asks Suyong. I need you to go on a little trip. As Suyong reads her next assignment, she can't help but to tremble in anger. Why me? Out of all the agents in the department, why do I need to go look after Suho? Miso tells her that she needs her to do this assignment because she's the best agent the department has. When Suho's portal appears, they'll be dealing with a completely unknown planet. They don't know what kind of creatures live there. And what happens if it opens in a city? Out of all the agents in the department, Suyong is the most likely to survive a battle with monsters from a new planet. Also, she's the best protection available for any civilians unfortunate enough to be near the portal. Until the portal opens, Miso wants Suyong to stick beside Suho 24/7 at all costs. You know what I mean, right? Says Miso with a sly smile. Back at Suho clan's base of operations, Dongsu is excited because they can now do level 2 dungeons. However, Junho comments that they need at least a group of D-rank hunters to do a level 2 dungeon. And since they're short-handed, he thinks they should focus on level 1 dungeons. Suho agrees that they should focus on level 1 dungeons until they make more money and level up. Just then, Myeongjin, the monk, returns from his time off and he's ready to go hunting. Out at the hunting field, several groups of hunters are making their way to the portal. The swordsman, whose name is Jasik, spots Suho and he runs up to greet him. I heard that you made your own clan, says Jasik. Suho asks what the swordsman is doing in a temporary group. Why aren't you with your friends from before? But before Jasik can answer, he has to rejoin his group. Suho clan also leaves and heads into the dungeon. However, Jasik feels bad for not telling Suho the truth. The truth is that his original group disbanded. The stress of fighting monsters took its toll on a few of the members, and without the core members, the group quickly fell apart. Suho and his clan also leave and enter the dungeon. Meanwhile, Suyong is riding through the city on her motorcycle. She just left Suho clan's office, but they've already left for the dungeon. She asks Miso to send her the dungeon's coordinates and she heads off to find Suho. Back in the dungeon, Myeongjin, Junho and Dongsu are showing off their new skills as Suho observes. However, Jasik and his temporary group aren't doing so well. Jasik thinks to himself that he was jealous of Suho clan. He wants to join Suho's group, but there's no way they'd accept a lowly E-rank swordsman like himself. Clan Suho exits the dungeon on a high note. They're clearing the dungeons quicker and they don't even feel tired after the battle. As they're leaving, they're greeted by a businessman. He introduces himself as Myung Choi from the BDG Guild. They're one of the top 20 guilds in Korea, and they wanted to give Suho clan a gift to congratulate them for leveling up. The BDG Guild wants to let them enter a level 2 dungeon in their district, free of charge. Dongsu is excited because it usually costs $10,000 to get into a level 2 dungeon, but Junho wants to prepare before trying to take on the dungeon. Mr. Choi tells them not to worry. He's got all the equipment they'll need if they're ready to head out now. Suho is interested, but he wants his team to go back to a level 1 dungeon to work on their teamwork. He'll head to the level 2 dungeon alone. Mr. Choi and Suho drive to the dungeon and Suho comments that it's pretty empty. "Shouldn't there be more hunters here?" he asks. Mr. Choi explains that it's empty because it's very new. Suyoung arrives at the dungeon and finds Dongsu, Junho, and the monk. She asks where Suho is and they tell her that he just left for a different dungeon. She gets back on her motorcycle and drives off to find Suho. Suyoung tells Miso that Suho is going to a level 2 dungeon and that she's headed there now. Miso wants her to follow him into the portal to observe his combat skills. Why? There's nothing really impressive about a level 2 dungeon. Suyoung also protests that she doesn't have the proper gear and her clothes will be ruined if she tries going through a level 2 portal. Miso reminds her that she has her bracelet and that she'll be paid double for this trip. Suyoung continues to protest, but in the end she agrees to do it. Once Suho and Mr. Choi arrive, the guild's representative gives Suho an attack plan and a backpack full of equipment. As he's about to enter the portal, Suho invites Mr. Choi out for a meal after he's done with the dungeon, which he eagerly accepts. Suho activates his battle equipment and enters the dungeon just as Suyoung arrives. Suyoung asks Mr. Choi if that was Suho entering the portal just now. "Yeah, that was Suho, but who are you?" Suyoung runs towards the dungeon portal while telling Mr. Choi that she's part of Suho clan. The businessman smirks as Suyoung enters the dungeon. The people that contacted him to kill Suho clan said they'd pay $2 million per head. With both Suho and Suyoung, that'll be a total of $4 million. Suyoung jumps through the portal as her clothes begin to disintegrate from the dimensional energy. As Suho is getting used to the new environment, the portal door behind him crackles with energy. He suddenly hears Suyoung's voice behind him tell him to close his eyes. "Don't turn around," she says as she enters the dungeon completely nude. She immediately activates her bracelet, which releases a type of battle gear which begins to cover her body. Suyoung thinks to herself that they should have tripled her pay for this. She's then shocked to see Suho staring directly at her. "I told you not to turn around." "How much did you see?" she asks him. "Wait a minute," he says. "When we first met, you saw me nude as well. This makes us even." Suyoung begins to protest, but he asks her why she's here. "Did you come to fight?" "No," she responds. "Didn't Captain Miso tell you that she was sending an agent?" "Oh," says Suho. "But Miso said she was sending her best." Suyoung tells him not to underestimate her and that she only came to see how good he was. Suho is fine with that, but he doesn't want her touching his prey. As the portal door closes behind her, Suyoung spots an enemy right behind Suho. An orc warrior is staring at Suho and Suyoung. Suyoung comments that this monster is typically a dungeon boss. "We must be lucky," she adds sarcastically. Suho says he can sense 4 of them. "What?" responds the blonde with a worried look on her face. Just then, the ground around them rumbles as the orc warriors make their way towards the duo. "That can't be true," says Suyoung. "This is only a level 2 dungeon." "This isn't a level 2, responds Suho. "Couldn't you sense it when you were coming through the portal?" "Are you sure you're the best?" he says teasingly. Suho isn't bothered by the level of the monsters and reminds Suyoung not to touch his prey. He then dashes towards the orc with tremendous speed and tackles it to the ground. Suho picks up the orc's weapon and uses it to brutally defeat it. Just as the first orc falls dead, 2 more orc warriors appear. Suho quickly defeats one of them by throwing the axe at it. He then runs off as the third orc lumbers after him. Suho then jumps and grabs a tree vine. He swings through the trees and gets right above the orc warrior. He then drops right on top of the orc and cracks it in the head with a closed fist. Suyoung is amazed that he's able to completely crush the orc warriors with a single blow. As the fourth orc warrior comes running towards them, it swings an axe at Suho. But he dodges it and kicks it in the head with blinding speed. As Suyoung approaches, Suho hands her the backpack and tells her she can help with gathering the bloodstones. Suyoung wonders about Suho. He only has the experience of an F rank, but he has no hesitation when he's slaughtering the monsters. Does he not have any empathy, she thinks to herself? This whole situation seems ridiculous to Suyoung. She comments that he's just killed multiple boss rank orcs, but she still can't locate the door with her search skill. This dungeon is at least a level 4. And if it's higher, they'll have a hard time making it out alive even with the 2 of them working together. After hearing that, Suho is astounded. That guy from the BDG guild tricked him into this amazing dungeon. And he did it for me for free. I'll treat him big time when I get out of here. Suyoung thinks Suho is crazy, but before she can say anything, another orc appears behind her. She reaches for her sword, but she remembers that she left it on her motorcycle. Before the orc can swing its axe at the blonde, Suho appears and slashes the orc right across the neck. As the orc falls dead, Suho tells her not to worry because he's strong. Although he was stronger before. He was even stronger before? Suyoung thinks in disbelief. Just then, the ground begins rumbling again. Suyoung uses her insight skill and detects a legion of orc warriors running towards them. As the army of orcs runs towards them, Suho smiles in delight. The prey just keeps coming at us even without my engine here. At that moment, 2 riders come running towards them. These are orc warriors riding on the backs of giant wolves. Cool, there are wolves here, says Suho as his eyes sparkle with delight. Suho and Suyoung run towards the orcs, but Suho scolds her and tells her to keep her hands to herself. The prey is all mine, he reminds her. Now isn't the time for that foolishness, she snaps back. Suyoung jumps at the orcs while activating her shield as Suho slashes at them. Although Suyoung doesn't have her katana, she does have a backup sword in her inventory. With this new sword, she cuts the orc rider, but her weapon isn't as good as her normal weapon. Just then Suho leaps at the orc rider and kicks it off the wolf. He lands gracefully and continues to slash his way through the orcs. Suho runs at the horde and makes another leaping attack, however this time the orc chieftain hits him with its mace. Suho crashes hard into the ground as the mace-wielding chieftain roars. Suho makes a quick recovery and questions if this is the boss. He dashes towards the chieftain again, but this time Suho is able to dodge the mace attack. As he closes the distance with the orc chieftain, Suho sinks his blade into the orc. Is it dead? Wonders Suyoung. Suho is surprised as the orc swings its mace yet again and catches him hard in the ribs. Meanwhile, at the returnee control department, Captain Miso is receiving a strange report. Her subordinate noticed that Suyoung's and Suho's cell phones are sending signals from 2 separate places even though they're supposed to be together. And there hasn't been any movement for the past hour. Miso wonders what's going on because she's sure the 2 of them are together. She tries calling Suyoung but doesn't get an answer. However, Miso's subordinate was able to locate Suyoung in a level 5 dungeon. What? A level 5 dungeon? Miso immediately feels guilty about pressuring her to follow Suho into the dungeon. The subordinate tells her that the DGB guild is in charge of the dungeon and Miso tells him to get in contact with that guild immediately. Back in the dungeon, Suho crashes into the ground hard as a gang of orcs charges at him. Suyoung calls out to him frantically, however Suho smiles because this will actually be a challenge. Suho leaps at the orc closest to him and throws it into the orcs in the rear. He then grabs 2 of the orcs' axes and attacks the remaining monsters. From behind the trees a barrage of arrows comes flying as Soo-young runs and dodges. She rolls and dodges incoming arrows. As she looks up, she sees several orcs running towards her. However, she uses her defense bomb skill to eradicate the orcs that stand before her. Suho grabs Soo-young by the wrist and quickly drags her away as the orc chieftain slams his mace right where she was standing. But Suho doesn't stop. He continues to pull her away from the battle. "What are you doing?" "We need to run," he responds. Soo-young points out that they're completely surrounded with no way to escape, but Suho sees an opening. "That's a cliff," she yells at him. Suho continues to run while picking the blonde up in his arms. "Hold on tight," he tells her as he takes a leap off the edge of the cliff. Several orcs have followed Suho and Soo-young over the edge of the cliff. As they fall, Soo-young screams how ridiculous he is. As they hit the ground, the force of the impact makes a crater where they landed, however they are both unharmed. A few seconds later, they can hear the sound of the orcs hitting the ground all around them. But unlike Suho and Soo-young, the impact kills the orcs. As the blonde realizes that she's still alive, Suho drops her on the ground and walks away. The rest of the orcs look at them from the top of the cliff as Soo-young contemplates how they could possibly survive a fall from so high up. Later that day, they are resting in a cave and Soo-young asks Suho what his plan is. His plan is simple. He'll kill 4 more orcs to level up. Then he'll go put the hurt on the rest of them. Soo-young tells him that increasing his level won't make that big of a difference, it's not a power-up. But Suho responds that leveling up removes the restrictions on his abilities. The more he levels up, the more his power resembles what it did in the other world. So for him, leveling up is exactly like a power-up. Back in Korea, a large crowd is gathered at the portal to the level 5 dungeon. The police are there, so are news crews, ambulances, and people from the general public. They are reporting that Suho and Soo-young have been in the dungeon for 2 days so far and that Mr. Choi of the DGB Guild has been arrested for what he did. The focus now is on whether Suho will be able to make it out alive. As he was rumored to be a returnee from an unknown 4th planet, his survival is of great importance to the Korean government. Back at the returnee control department, Miso storms into the chief's office. She wants more people to be arrested. Surely there were more people involved than just Mr. Choi. However, the chief doesn't believe it's worth it to go after an entire level 5 guild for this. After all, guilds play an important role in the society. In addition, he's not convinced that Suho is as valuable as she thinks he is. Sure, he's strong, but there's no proof that he was on a new planet. He might just be a returnee from a regular dungeon. The chief says the most they can do now is just have faith and wait to see what happens. This isn't the response that Miso wanted to hear. She breaks down and cries for her friend Soo-young. Back inside the level 5 dungeon, one of Suho's green fairies flutters past an orc. The orc tries to catch her, but she's too quick. The fairy leads the monster deeper into the woods so that Suho can leap out of the trees and slash it. 3 more orcs until I level up, Suho says to himself. Suho returns to Soo-young and she uses her insight skill to locate another orc. As soon as she locates it, he runs out and leaps at the orc. However, it's a trap. The orcs are quite intelligent and have set a booby trap for Suho. As soon as he hits the ground, the orc blows a horn to call the rest of his army. Immediately, several orcs come out from their hiding spots. Soo-young yells for Suho to get up, but before he can, all of the orcs rush at him. Suho wonders what's happening to him as his body wobbles. "What's going on?" he says. He's beginning to feel dizzy and is having trouble moving his body. Soo-young yells at him that it's because he hasn't eaten in 2 days. She then dives towards the orcs and uses her defense bomb skill to destroy them before they can reach Suho. Soo-young collapses from exhaustion as Suho runs to attack another 2 orcs. With one final kill needed before he can level up, Suho leaps and swings an axe towards the orc in front of him. Suho's about to bring the axe down on the orc, however the orc chieftain steps in between them and hits Suho once more with his spiked mace. Suho goes flying backwards as the chieftain roars. Soo-young watches from her position on the ground, unable to do anything at the moment. Soo-ho crashes into another orc and knocks him to the ground. During the tumble, he loses his grip on the axe, which goes flying into the air. The axe then lands directly on the orc, killing him. At this, Soo-ho levels up and the status window asks if you would like to unlock the beast transformation skill. The orc chieftain slowly makes his way towards Soo-young, but she's at her limit and can barely stand. However, she uses the last bit of her energy to launch an attack. As Soo-ho activates beast transformation, his eyes glow yellow. At the same time, his little dog Baku disappears from the apartment and becomes part of Soo-ho's transformation. As Soo-young fights desperately for her life, Soo-ho's face and mouth become dog-like, his fingers extend into claws and hair grows to cover his whole body. By the time his transformation is complete, the orc chieftain has gotten the upper hand over Soo-young and is about to move in for the kill. However, Soo-ho, in his dog hybrid form, runs towards the orc, grabs him by the face and slams him into the ground. Soo-ho then pummels the orc relentlessly for several minutes. He then opens his mouth wide and bites down on the orc's neck as Soo-young looks on in horror. A few moments later, Baku returns to the apartment and Soo-ho returns to normal. Soo-ho looks at Soo-young and tells her to help him gather what they can and get something to eat. But Soo-young doesn't see the point. She's sure they're going to die there in the dungeon. The orc chieftain is dead, but the door still hasn't opened. What do you think that means? She asks him. So the chieftain wasn't the boss. Why are you so scared? How bad can it really be? He asks her. In order to answer his question, Soo-young tells Soo-ho a story from her past. When she first upgraded to be rank, she joined a level 5 dungeon quest. There were several other powerful hunters in the group, including Soo-young's boyfriend and Miso. They were under attack by several orc warriors, and while a lot of orcs were killed, some of Soo-young's group members were taken down as well. As the group began to run, they were attacked by the orc lord. In an instant, Soo-young's boyfriend was killed. However, before he died, he told her to pick up his sword and carry it with her. The battle with the orc lord and the death of her boyfriend traumatized Soo-young. After Soo-young finishes her story, Soo-ho approaches her and says he's sorry for what happened. Outside the portal, the world is watching to see what will become of Soo-ho and Soo-young. Dong-soo is crying on his live stream over Soo-ho. Miso is crying over Soo-young. There are rituals being performed for their safe return. Several guild leaders are there as well to offer their support. The entire country is enthralled by this event. Even Hiro Okita, the Korean hunter that moved to Japan, is watching the situation unfold on the television. Back inside the dungeon, Soo-young and Soo-ho are eating dinner in a cave. Since Soo-ho has leveled up, he has more food options from the performance store. It turns out that both of them are foodies. As they bond over dinner, Soo-young thanks Soo-ho for everything. Soo-ho then asks her about her past. Did you kill the orc lord with your boyfriend's sword? No, she says. She fainted on the spot as soon as her boyfriend died. But when she woke up, she was in the hospital and Miso brought her the sword while she was visiting her there. Eventually the orc lord was killed by the group, but only after 2 more ranked hunters were taken out. They suspect an orc lord must be in this dungeon somewhere, and Soo-ho sends his fairy to find it. It doesn't take long before she finds him in the orc castle. Soo-ho is ready to go defeat the monster, but Soo-young nervously asks if he has a plan. Find and kill, he responds. Later, at the orc lord's castle, the drawbridge opens and a group of orc riders runs out searching for Soo-ho and Soo-young. Soo-young and dog hybrid Soo-ho watch from the bushes as the riders leave the castle. She's sitting on his back as if he's a horse. Now, she tells him. Soo-ho then takes off running with Soo-young holding on for dear life. The orc riders quickly spot them and come running behind the hunters. From the castle towers, orcs shoot arrows at them, however Soo-young's shield easily blocks their attacks. Soo-ho jumps and enters the castle before the drawbridge can be completely closed. They've made it inside, but there's a legion of orcs at the entrance. Soo-young uses her defense bomb skill to blow up everything in their way. Suho and Soo-young run through the smoke and head towards the center of the castle. However, it won't be that easy. Several more orcs jump down on them from the towers as Suho runs up. Soo-young is pulled off of Suho's back, but she tells him to keep going and not to worry about her. She's able to grab hold of a ledge and make her way onto one of the castle balconies. Unfortunately, there are even more orcs there waiting for her. This time Soo-young is ready. She summons her sword and prepares to fight. Meanwhile, Suho is still running up the tower while completely ignoring the orcs in his way. The commotion caused by Suho and Soo-young has gotten the Orc Lord's attention and his eyes flash open. He stands at the top of the castle looking down at his domain. Before the Orc Lord realizes it, Suho appears and bites down on his neck. They then crash through the castle walls and fall from the top of the castle. As they fall, the Orc Lord is impaled by one of his castle spires. The impact causes the tower to crumble and fall towards the orcs on the ground below. Another tower of the castle suddenly explodes as Soo-young and several orcs fall towards the ground. As Soo-young falls, she wonders if this is how it ends for her, but Suho catches her, does a tumbling roll and quickly gets to his feet. Soo-young is shocked and asks him what happened to the Orc Lord. "It's dead," responds Suho. He quickly throws her on his back and tells her to scan for the door. She finds it and they start to run for the exit. Soo-young can't believe he killed it so quickly, but the fact that the door is open proves it. Meanwhile, outside the portal, the DGB Guild employees also realize that the door is open. The members of Suho Clan, Miso, the Returnee Control Department, and the general public are all overcome with emotion because they understand that Suho and Soo-young have defeated the boss. Now, they have 10 minutes to reach the exit. Back inside the dungeon, Suho and Soo-young are running for the door. However, there are orc riders right on their heels. Suho changes direction and Soo-young asks what he's doing. They only have a few minutes to reach the exit. But Suho wants to tame some wolves before he leaves. As they look at Suho, the wolves immediately fall under his control. "Follow me," he says, and they begin to sprint after him. As they begin heading for the door, more orc riders appear in front of them. However, there's a small alleyway that Suho uses to escape. Suho and his new wolves manage to slip past the orcs and make it out of the castle. With only 23 seconds remaining before the door closes, they spot the exit. However, there are a few more orc riders chasing them still, and one of them throws a spear aimed right for Soo-young. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks!